My dad said I was a burden, my brother laughed that no one would miss me, so I vanished. Months later, they begged me to come back, and what came next left them speechless. My name is Daniel, I'm 26 years old, and until recently I lived in a house where silence carried more weight than words. You'd think I'd be used to it by now, the passive-aggressive sighs at dinner, the lingering looks of disappointment, the way my dad would clear his throat like he was preparing to say something important, only to mutter "never mind" and walk off. That was just life growing up in our house. My older brother Evan was the golden child, captain of the soccer team, the first in our family to get a scholarship. "Mister, we're so proud of you." Me? I was just Daniel. I was the kid who liked to draw, who fixed up an old laptop from a yard sale so I could learn animation, who stayed up late editing short videos in secret because I knew if I showed anyone they'd just laugh. I never really fit into my family, not in a way that made them cruel on the surface, but in the quiet, cutting way where love was conditional and kindness felt like a reward system. My dad, Alan, was the kind of man who believed respect had to be earned, and apparently I hadn't, not like Evan had. Our mom passed away when I was 10, and since then, the warmth in the house had disappeared. Dad filled the void with long hours at work, and Evan filled it with achievements. I filled it with silence. I never expected praise, but I thought maybe, just once, they'd notice how hard I was trying. When I landed a remote job doing video editing, I was thrilled. I showed my dad one of the projects, a small indie commercial I'd worked on. He nodded absently, then asked if Evan needed help fixing his car. That was 3 years ago. He never asked about my job again. Things got worse last year, slowly but steadily. My health took a hit. Nothing major, just recurring migraines, constant fatigue, some stuff the doctor chalked up to stress. I tried to explain it to my dad, but he looked at me like I'd confessed to being lazy. "You're always tired," he said once, shaking his head like it physically pained him. "Maybe if you did some real work you wouldn't be..." Evan started joining in around then. He'd tease me in that friendly but non-real way that only siblings can get away with. "Must be nice to nap all day and call it work," he'd say with a smirk. "Bet Netflix is thrilled to have you." I laughed it off at first, thinking maybe he didn't mean it, but it chipped away at me, especially when I overheard him on the phone with one of his friends saying, "Dan? Yeah, he's still living in the basement like a troll. Dad's been carrying him for years. No clue why he keeps enabling it." That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying it in my head, carrying me. I was paying rent, groceries, the electricity bill half the time. I even covered Evan's parking tickets a few months back when he couldn't afford them, not that he ever thanked me. Then came the day everything changed. It was a Saturday. Evan and Dad were in the garage fixing something on the truck. I was on my way out to pick up groceries. I stepped into the garage to ask if they needed anything. Dad didn't even look up. "You don't need to bother," he said. Evan snorted. "Yeah, unless they've got a sale on excuses." I blinked. "What's that supposed to mean?" That's when my dad turned. His expression was blank, almost cold. "It means we're tired, Daniel. Tired of you moping around like a ghost. You're a grown man, and you act like a child. You're nothing but a burden." I just stood there. I wasn't even angry yet. I was stunned. The word burden rang in my ears like an alarm. Evan leaned against the workbench, arms crossed. "Let's be real, Dan. No one would miss you if you left." That was the moment. You know those seconds in life when everything clicks into place, where time slows and you suddenly see things for what they are? That was it for me. I didn't shout. I didn't throw anything or slam the door. I just nodded. "Okay," I said. That was it, just okay. I turned, went back inside and packed a duffel bag with essentials: laptop, clothes, sketchbooks, charger. I left my house key on the kitchen counter. I wrote a short note that said, "Since I'm such a burden, I'll stop being one." And I left. I moved across the state that night. I had a friend from college, Liv, who'd always said I could crash if I ever needed a change. I never thought I'd take her up on it, but that night I called her, and within hours I was on the road. I found a room in her building the next week. I started freelancing harder than ever, pulled extra gigs, found a few stable clients who valued my work. For the first time, I didn't have to prove myself to anyone. I was just me. 3 months went by, then 6. No calls, no texts, nothing. I guess I shouldn't have been surprised. Until this week. It was a quiet Tuesday. I just wrapped up a project and was eating lunch when my phone buzzed. A voicemail. I didn't recognize the number at first, but when I hit play, I nearly dropped my fork. "Daniel, it's Dad. Listen, please come home. Things aren't..." "Look, I know we haven't spoken, but I need to talk to you. We need to talk. Please, just call me back." I didn't. Not yet, anyway. Because the moment I heard that message, my heart didn't race with guilt or relief. It clenched with something deeper, something sharper. Not anger, not sadness. just clarity. They only reached out when they needed something, and the truth is, I wasn't sure if I wanted to hear what it was, not yet, but I had a feeling I was about to find out. I stared at my phone for a long time after that voicemail. The lunch I'd been eating went cold. My mind wasn't racing, it was quiet, too quiet, like when you wake up from a bad dream and everything is just still. I played the message again and again, listening for something, anything that sounded like an apology, but it wasn't there. Just panic, desperation. Not even my name spoken with softness, just Daniel, sharp, still. I didn't call him back. That same night, Liv noticed I was off. We were watching some old animated film I used to love as a kid, comfort food for the soul, and she glanced over, saw the look on my face and hit pause. "What's going on?" I told her. Not everything, just the voicemail. Her expression didn't change much, just a little crease in her brow, the same one she always got when something was bothering her. "You thinking of going back?" "I don't know," I said. But I did. I just didn't want to say it out loud. Liv didn't push, she never did. That was the thing about her. She had this calm about her, like she could feel the storm in other people without trying to fix it. She just stayed beside you until the storm passed. "Whatever you decide," she said, "just make sure it's not out of guilt. You don't owe them your pain, Dan." I nodded, but I didn't sleep that night. My brain wouldn't shut off. I kept wondering what Evan had done. Evans. That pause in Dad's voice. Had something happened? Was he in trouble? Was he sick? Or was it something else? 2 days passed. I went about my work, met deadlines, edited projects, made small talk, but I kept checking my phone. One voicemail, no follow-up. Then Thursday evening came, and I got a text from my cousin Julie. It simply said, "Hey, I know this is random, but are you okay? I saw something weird on Facebook that set me off." I called her right away. Julie picked up immediately. "Daniel, oh my God, I wasn't sure you'd answer. Listen, I don't want to stir anything, but your dad made a post on Facebook earlier today. It's been deleted now, but I saw it. It was just one line. Family shouldn't wait until it's too late to fix things." My mouth went dry. "What's going on with Evan?" Julie hesitated. "I don't know everything, but from what my mom said, there was some kind of incident at his job, something bad. Apparently he was fired last week after a huge argument with his boss. There are rumors he was caught lying on some reports, trying to blame it on someone else. It got ugly." That tracked. Evan had always been smooth talking, always able to weasel out of trouble, but I never thought he'd go that far. I thanked her for letting me know and hung up. My stomach was in knots, not because Evan had lost his job, but because I knew what was happening. I'd seen this pattern before. When things fell apart for Evan, Dad swooped in. He defended him, protected him, and when that wasn't enough, he looked for someone to blame or someone to save them. And now, that someone was me. The next morning, I got another voicemail, this time from a different number, shorter, clipped. "Daniel, it's Evan. I know I said some stuff I shouldn't have. Can we just talk? Please." No apology, just a softening of tone, like if he sounded sorry, maybe I wouldn't notice that he wasn't actually saying sorry. I didn't respond. Instead, I went for a walk. It was cloudy, cool, the kind of weather that makes you think too much. I found a bench by the river and sat there for an hour, just watching the water. And I started to remember things. Like how, when we were kids, Evan used to hide my sketchbooks and tell me it was for my own good, so you'll stop embarrassing yourself. How Dad refused to come to the student showcase when I won a small local award for an animation short. Said he had work, then later admitted he just didn't think it was that important. How I once offered to help Evan with a video presentation for his college course, spent 3 nights editing it for him, and he turned it in without crediting me. And when I asked why, he just shrugged and said, "You're good at being invisible." I think part of me always hoped they'd come around, that if I kept proving myself, one day I'd finally be enough. But now, it wasn't just about being enough. It was about whether I wanted them to be part of my life at all. That weekend, I got a letter in the mail, a real letter, handwritten. The return address was home. Inside, it was just a single page, my dad's handwriting, neat, precise. "Daniel, I don't know how to fix what I said. I don't even know if it can be fixed. I just know I was wrong about you, about everything. I said things I can't take back, and Evan, he's lost right now. I am too. We both are. I'm not asking you to come back. I'm just asking you not to disappear completely. You were never a burden, I was." It should have hit me harder than it did. I stared at the letter for a long time, then folded it back up, slid it into the envelope, and tucked it away in a drawer. That night, I opened up a blank document and started writing. Not a message to him, not a reply, just words. My story, my version. What it felt like to grow up feeling like a shadow, what it meant to walk away without burning everything down, what it meant to finally breathe. And as I wrote, I realized I wasn't writing it for them, I was writing it for me, because sometimes the only way to find peace isn't to go back, it's to move forward. And I had a feeling I was just getting started. But then, 2 days later, something happened that changed everything. I got another voicemail, only this time it wasn't from my dad or Evan. It was from my childhood neighbor, Mrs. Patel, and her message, "Daniel, I think you need to come home. There's something you don't know." I froze, because the tone in her voice wasn't desperate, it wasn't manipulative, it was scared. And that's when I knew this wasn't over. I must have replayed that voicemail at least a dozen times. Mrs. Patel had always been a kind soul, quiet, gentle, never one to exaggerate or gossip. When we were kids, she used to bring over tins of her homemade almond cookies every Christmas. Even after Mom passed, she kept doing it, just left them at the door with a note, no fuss, no expectations. So hearing her voice laced with fear, that got under my skin in a way my father's apology never could. I called her back immediately, hands clammy, my heart already bracing for something I couldn't name. She picked up after one ring. "Daniel," she said. "God." Her voice was hushed like she didn't want anyone to hear. "I'm here," I said quickly. "What's going on? Are you okay?" "I'm fine, dear. It's not me," she said, pausing like she was trying to figure out how to say something she really didn't want to say. "It's your father and Evan. They've done something, and I didn't want to be the one to tell you, but I think you deserve to know before they try to pull you into it." I leaned forward, voice tense. "What did they do?" She hesitated. "There was a man here yesterday, some kind of investigator. He knocked on my door asking questions about your dad, about financial records, property lines. I didn't tell him much, but Daniel, your name came up." My mouth went dry. "In what way?" "They think your father may have taken out loans," she said carefully. "Loans against the house, against some assets that weren't his alone, to leverage." I didn't respond at first. I felt like I'd been dunked in ice water. She continued, her voice full of apology. "They think he forged your name, maybe on a cosign. I don't know all the details, but the man said you might be legally liable if you don't act quickly. That's why I called. You need to check." Immediately, I thanked her repeatedly and hung up, my hands shaking as I opened my laptop. I pulled up my credit report, and what I saw made my stomach twist. There it was. A personal loan in my name, $35,000, opened 6 months ago, address listed as my father's, cosigner none, signature mine. It looked like mine, close enough to fool a bank, but I knew my own hand. This was not my signature. My mind reeled. I scrolled further. A second entry, a line of credit attached to a small business account, again my name, a fake signature. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the screen like it would rearrange itself into something less damning. But it didn't. And slowly, coldly, the pieces began to fit together. Dad had panicked when Evan lost his job. The golden boy, the family legacy, the one who was supposed to carry the name forward. But Evan was drowning, and Dad was willing to do anything to keep him afloat, even if it meant dragging me down with them. I wanted to scream, to drive back home and bang on the door and demand answers, but I didn't. I sat in silence, every breath like broken glass in my throat. They didn't want me back because they missed me. They wanted me back to clean up their mess, to take the fall, to be useful for once. Suddenly, all those messages, those calls, that letter, they weren't acts of remorse. They were calculated, strategic, desperate, sure, but not in a way that meant love, in a way that meant survival, and I was the life raft. I closed the laptop slowly. I didn't cry, I didn't yell, I just sat there, numb, until I picked up my phone and called someone I hadn't spoken to in years. His name was Jordan. He used to be my roommate in college, a law student who later became an attorney specializing in financial fraud. We hadn't talked since graduation, not really, but I still had his number. I texted him, "Hey, it's Daniel, I need your help, it's urgent." He called back 5 minutes later. By the end of the hour, I had a plan. Jordan told me exactly what to do. How to file a fraud report, how to notify the bank and lock down my credit, how to request the original application documents and have them flagged for investigation, how to protect myself legally, fast. It wasn't going to be easy, it wouldn't be quick, but I wasn't helpless, and this time, I wasn't going to stay silent. The next morning, I did something I never thought I'd do. I drove back home not to stay, not to talk, to confront. I parked across the street from the house I'd once called mine. It looked the same yet different, smaller, sadder. The lawn was overgrown, the shutters crooked. There was an oil stain on the driveway that hadn't been there before. I walked up to the door and knocked once. Evan opened it. His face froze. "Dan?" I didn't smile. "Where's Dad?" He blinked, clearly trying to read my expression, then stepped aside. I stepped through the threshold into the living room, where nothing had changed. Same faded recliner, same broken lamp with the crooked shade, same scent of dust and regret. Dad was sitting at the kitchen table, flipping through a pile of envelopes. When he looked up and saw me, his eyes widened. "Daniel, you came?" I dropped a folder onto the table. His smile faltered. "What's this?" I leaned in, my voice cold. "That's the paperwork for the loans you took out in my name." He paled. Evan stiffened behind me. I continued. "I know everything. I know about the forgery, the fraud. I've already contacted the banks, filed the reports, pulled my credit. You dragged me into your mess without even asking. You used me." Dad opened his mouth, but no words came out. I shook my head. "And now you're going to face the consequences." And then, before either of them could speak, my phone buzzed. A text from Jordan. It said, "The bank just confirmed they're launching an investigation. They want to speak to you directly, and they're opening a criminal case." I showed them the message, and for the first time in my life, I watched my father break. His face crumpled. Not with sorrow, with fear. Pure, undeniable fear. Evan stepped back, eyes darting. "You wouldn't actually press charges, would you?" I looked him straight in the eye and said, "Watch me." I walked out of that house with my head held high. For the first time in years, the sun was starting to set, casting long shadows across the driveway as I stepped back into my car. My hands trembled, not from fear but from adrenaline. That confrontation had been building inside me for years, bubbling beneath the surface every time I'd been dismissed, ignored, or made to feel like I didn't matter. Now I had finally stood up for myself. I didn't even look back at the house as I pulled away. Let them sit in it. The silence, the weight of their actions, the panic of consequences coming their way. For once, it wasn't my problem to fix. I'd done nothing wrong. I wasn't the disappointment. I wasn't the burden. I was the one they thought they could use because I had always kept the peace. But not anymore. By the time I got back to my apartment, I had 2 voicemails waiting. One was from my father. He didn't cry, but his voice shook. "Daniel, please don't do this." I messed up, okay? I panicked. Evan was spiraling. I didn't know what else to do. You weren't here and he needed help. I thought I'd figure it out before it caught up with us. "Please, we're still family. We can fix this." The second was from Evan. His tone was sharper. "Seriously, Dan. You're going to throw us under the bus like that, after everything we've done for you? You wouldn't have a job if Dad hadn't let you freeload for so long. Don't act like some kind of victim. This is just making things worse for everyone." That voicemail made me angry. Everything they've done for me, the sheer audacity, the revisionist memory, the twisting of truth to make me the villain in their story. I didn't respond to either of them, not out of pettiness, but because I didn't need to. My energy wasn't going toward their redemption arc anymore. It was going toward rebuilding what they tried to destroy, my life. Over the next few weeks, things moved fast. Jordan helped me coordinate everything. He connected me with a financial investigator and a legal team that specialized in identity fraud. They immediately took action, subpoenaing the original loan applications, subpoenaing the original forensic review. The forensic analysis proved what I already knew. The signatures weren't mine. The pen pressure, slant, and stroke patterns were off subtly, but unmistakably. The banks, once presented with the evidence and my sworn statement, began reversing the charges and removing the loans from my record. It was a process, slow, tedious, but one that steadily untangled me from the financial noose my father had tried to place around my neck. A few weeks later, I received a formal letter from the county clerk's office. The local authorities were moving forward with charges: bank fraud, identity theft, forgery. It wasn't just about the loans anymore. It was about intent, pattern, misuse of trust. I sat with the letter for a long time. Holding it felt surreal, like I was finally holding proof that I wasn't crazy, that everything I'd endured wasn't just family drama or a misunderstanding. It was a crime, and I had every right to see justice carried out. Liv was the first to hug me when I told her the news. "This is big, Dan," she said. "This is your closure." It was. But it was also more than that. It was a line in the sand. The trial didn't happen overnight, of course. The investigation took several months. But when the day finally came, I sat in that courtroom, clean-shaven, calm, dressed in a suit that fit better than anything I'd worn at home. I watched my father, once so tall and rigid, now hunched in a courtroom chair, eyes sunken, hands trembling. Evan was there too, fidgeting, angry, still defiant. I didn't speak to them, not once. When I took the stand, I told the truth. No embellishments, no dramatics, just the truth. I spoke about the years of neglect, the slow erosion of self-worth, the constant dismissal, and finally the betrayal. How they used my name, my credit, my trust to dig themselves out of a hole they had made. The judge listened carefully. In the end, the court ruled in my favor. The loans were declared fraudulent, my record was cleared. My father was sentenced to 2 years of probation, 200 hours of community service, and mandatory financial counseling. Given his age, the court showed leniency, but he would carry the fraud conviction with him for the rest of his life. Evan wasn't charged, but the bank blacklisted him, and his professional license was revoked. Whatever career he thought he still had. And me? I walked out of that courtroom free, not just legally but emotionally, spiritually free in a way I hadn't felt in years. I never went back to that house after the trial. It was foreclosed. Turns out the debts were deeper than I realized. I found out from Julie that my father had quietly moved in with a distant cousin on the other side of the state. Evan was couch surfing and apparently trying to start a podcast. I didn't listen. I didn't need to, because my life had finally moved on. I moved into a better apartment, one with a little balcony and a skylight in the bedroom. My client list grew. A small creative agency hired me as their full-time editor. I got promoted 6 months later. I even began teaching an online course for aspiring video editors, sharing the same tools and tricks I once had to learn in silence. I made friends, real ones, people who didn't just tolerate me, they saw me. I built a life I was proud of, one not defined by guilt or obligation or shame. One morning, about a year after the trial, I got a small package in the mail, no return address. Inside was a worn photograph, me at 10 years old, sitting on the living room floor with my sketchbook, smiling as my mother leaned over me, watching me draw. Taped to the back was a note in familiar handwriting. "I'm sorry I forgot who you were. I wish she'd been here. She would have stopped me." Dad. I stared at the photo for a long time, then put it in a box and stored it away. Because that part of my story, it was over. Now, when people ask me about my family, I tell them the truth, but I don't dwell on it. I don't lead with the pain. I lead with what I learned. About strength, about boundaries, about choosing yourself even when it hurts, about how silence can be survival but speaking up can be freedom. And when I walk past a mirror now, I don't see the burden they used to call me. I see a man who survived them and became more